Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today we'll be taking a look at the high-grade GN-Arms E-Type with the HG Exia Trans Am mode. This review is brought to you by Canadian Gundam, your one-stop shop for all your Gunpla and Plamo needs in North America, and that's where this came from. If you'd like one of your own, you can find it over on their website, and when you're checking out, don't forget to use the promo code Gunpla Network for 10% off. With something this big, the first thing that comes to your mind is how much of it actually moves. Is this just a statue with a couple of moving parts, or is this actually a legitimate model kit? And after building it, seeing all the parts in the box, a lot of them were pretty big. So I was like, well, okay, it's not necessarily a bad sign, but you almost kind of want this to move as much as the Exia does, and the actual GN-Arms have a lot of articulation in them, which is kind of surprising. The wings move around, the arms move around, the legs move around, the cannons move, the little cockpit piece flips back and forth, which is actually part of where the screws go in. I don't actually think it's to strengthen that joint as much as it is to strengthen the connection between the two big cannons on either side. But overall, I'm very, very pleased. I do have to say, this is kind of exceeding my expectations. It's big, it's glorious, I knew it was going to look cool, but getting it in different poses is really neat, and you have a surprising amount of flexibility in terms of what you can put in it. Now, of course, the high-grade Exia Trans Am mode comes with it, and it's the high-grade Exia. It's not actually the Trans Am, it has like the ribbons and stuff colored in red, but nothing else, which is a little weird, but well, it's a unique-looking Exia, I guess. But you get all the standard old-school high-grade Exia stuff. You get limited articulation at the elbows and the torso. That's really the only two major issue points. You get the unpainted beam saber, which we'll look at in a little bit. And then you kind of just have the standard accessories. It's not a terrible kit, but as you'll see, we'll have a couple of other options that you can put in there if you have them in your collection if you do pick this up. Now, in terms of just the GN-Arms itself, it's really cool, I do have to say. Like, playing with the GN-Arms, articulating it, moving it around, just on its own without anything in it is almost as fun as actually messing with anything in it. Because you aren't hampered by trying to move around something else, and there are so many different points of articulation that actually contribute. They're not kind of pointless. They have their own specific purpose and they execute it very well. We'll take a look at the articulation a little later, but overall, all the movement is pretty solid. Nothing is too loose, nothing is too tight. The only thing I have had a couple of times fall off on me are the legs at the actual joint in the body, but they're not too terrible. You just kind of have to be kind of a little careful with them. Just don't really force them too hard. But other than that, everything else is very solid, very stable, moves where it needs to. I think I did something stupid and built one of the cannons wrong, so it doesn't extend, but the cannons do extend. I think even in the one I did correctly, I put the little turbine-looking thingies in backwards, so they don't look perfect, but they still look cool. It's cool to have that inner detail and have Bandai think that out for something like this. It is overall very pleasant looking, it's very fun to build, it's going to be imposing on your shelf just due to its massive size. So if you have any other 00 stuff, it's going to look really good next to it. If you don't, this is a good place to start. It's big, it's not too hard to build, it's kind of a fun, relaxing build to get into, and it's going to look impressive even if you don't detail it up. It does have a good amount of surface detail on most of the parts, especially all of the bluish purple parts, but overall, if you don't want to touch it with a panel lining marker or any paint, and there's really very few places to paint, I have to say, you're good. Now, as I mentioned, the HG Exia Trans Am mode, or some weird variant of it, does come with this kit. However, it's weird they label it that way, and usually, having something labeled on the box is kind of important because you know what you're going to get. That being said, if you never watched 00, you're just seeing the picture, you know what you're getting. They don't at least lie to you visually on the box. But To call this Trans Am mode is kind of weird. Just the ribbons and the stickers have changed, and the one in the chest being so dark, it's really different, and it doesn't have that same pop that the green would. Now, that being said, it is still a good kit. The 00 series, the old high grades, are pretty good, especially in comparison to when they came out around like the 2010 to 2011-ish area, maybe a little earlier, maybe like 7 to 8, somewhere in there. But regardless, they're old. They did, have some kind of pioneering things for the time. You have double jointed knees, which is good. You do have a little bit more wiggle room in the waist. You have fully rotating shoulders with very limited blocking of articulation just due to the design. The 00 Exia, or the high-grade 00 Exia, is a little strange. These were the first kind of kits to have this extra piece between the torso and the shoulders, which is where the little vents for the front of the body come in. They don't hold great. They're not terrible. They're on a little ball joint in the back of the actual unit itself. If you're a little rough with them, they will pop out. They're not going to fall off, which is nice. You just kind of shove them back into place. But other than that, it's a good kit that comes with it. It's more of an addition to the GN arms than it is like the mainstay. So if you've never built an old school high grade Exia, this isn't a bad build at all. It's easy, it's straightforward, nothing too crazy. Outside of that, there are better Exias, sure, but it's a nice addition, and if you don't have anything else to put in the GN arms, it does look really good. And in terms of the GN arms articulation, because quite a bit of it does move, we'll take a look at it here, and do forgive some of the wobbling and some of the potential invisibility issues here. I did try to do some green screen work where I had some green gloves on, and they worked pretty well, just I need to work on my hand movement. But as you see, the wing does move up, and the wing piece in it folds in and out. The leg moves down and in and out as well, as you see right there. There's my thumb. And from there, the arms do unlatch and move out. You see that little peg there that holds them secure when it's in transport mode. They also have another hinge on the other end of that piece. The cannons fold up and fold down so that you can actually have them extend, and then the cockpit piece folds back to show you where the GN reactor connection is, as well as the little tab. Now, I've not had a great time getting the GN drive to fit in that little section. As you can see, I'm still messing around with it here, but the peg itself does well enough on most anything you're going to have to where it holds in. Then the little feet parts have little connectors or little spots where the feet can rest, so that'll also help hold them in depending on what you put in there. And in terms of the high-grade Exia, it does have some pretty standard articulation, a little subpar for what we're used to today, but definitely for that time frame, really good. As you can see, the head is moving there pretty nicely. A little hard to do with one hand without trying to get in front of the kit, which I end up having to do. But the head is on a ball joint, so it will move all around. You do have a little bit of issue as far as like the yellow pieces. They do go up and down as well, but if you want them up the way they're supposed to be, they're in the way. The arm will fully rotate around as well. It's just on a peg in there. The actual arm itself will shoot out pretty far, and you'll also get just a little above 90 in the elbow. The wrist is on a ball joint, so it does have its own motion as well. And that part I mentioned as well between the shoulder and the torso moves a little bit, but you're not getting a lot of articulation. The waist is just a peg, so no side to side, but you do get some swivel, which does help in some poses when it's not in the GN arms. The legs themselves are on a little wobble joint, so they are connected, but the legs do kick out pretty far. They're on a ball joint connector at the leg, so they will kind of kick pretty far forward and pretty far back. Now, of course, the back skirt is static, so you are going to be limited there, but you do have a nice double joint in the knee to compensate when moving forward. And once my arm gets out of the way, we can see that it's pretty close. You know, it's definitely a really good double joint, and you do get some nice detail on the bottom part of the knee. Then when you kick it back out, you do see the foot has a decent ball joint. It's not the best, but for its time, it is pretty solid. It will rotate all around. There's no hindrance of any ankle armor or anything like that. And it does have a pretty good side-to-side rocker, so if you want to take this out of the GN arms, you absolutely can. And in terms of accessories, of course, it's really only going to be the HG Exia, because the GN arms is just really a big accessory if you think about it. But we do get the GN-002, which is a really snug connection, so that's really nice. It is molded in kind of a gray color, which is not ideal, but if you have some liquid chrome, you can fix that right up, or if you don't mind, you can just leave it as is. You'll also have the shield. Now, the shield is molded pretty much just in blue plastic. You have to use a giant white sticker, which does have nice detailing, but doesn't fit perfect. It's pretty close, it's just not ideal. You'll also get one of the old school traditional beam saber with beam saber blade connected that's unpainted, so if you do want to have one you can, but you only get one, so for the 4 other hilts you don't have anything else. They do have the connector though if you have a bunch of extra beam saber blades laying around. Then you also have the GN short sword, which is all molded in white save the little blue hilt guard portion, as well as the GN longsword, which is the exact same. Once again, take some liquid chrome to them, fixes it right up, no big deal, but if you want to leave them in white, they don't look terrible. They do have connectors that you can switch out on the outer hip joint, but with the GN arms, it's really difficult to get them in and have them stay in. Now, I don't have a lot to compare this to, but I thought it might be kind of fitting to compare it to a ship with the EX Line's Archangel. And as you can see, it's actually pretty big. It's bigger than the Archangel, which is already a pretty sizable model kit to begin with. So if you have any EX models, this is kind of give you a frame of reference. But if you don't, and you have any master grades, here is next to the master grade Strike Freedom. Now, this is just the ship version, so of course it's going to be a little smaller, but when you open it up, it's not only almost as wide as the Strike itself, but it's almost as tall. It is really big, so just to give you an idea of how imposing this is on a shelf, here you go. So as I mentioned, a couple of other things will fit in the GN arms, including the real grade Exia. Well, it doesn't come with it. If you have it, you can absolutely put it in there if you have the action base adapter, or if you like, Canadian Gundam usually carries these, so just kind of keep that in mind while you're looking around for this. But there are actually quite a few kits that will fit. A lot of high grades have 3mm pegs that will definitely just plug right in, and some of the other real grades have the 3mm peg on the action base adapter. Now, do note, not all of them do. A lot of the earlier rail grades don't have that connector, so kind of take that with a grain of salt. And with the real grade Exia in there, it looks really good, as you would expect. Everything fits the way it needs to, it fits on the adapter, the feet fit into the bottom, and I feel like color-wise, this just matches better. The green really pops a lot more than the red does on the high grade, and generally the color separation of course helps. It's subtle, but the different blues pop a lot better, and generally speaking, if you get this and you don't have the real grade Exia, this is definitely something to consider just because I feel like it looks better and it's more reminiscent of what we actually saw in the show. But generally speaking, if you don't have it, not a big deal. If you do, it looks really good, as you can see. Now, I wanted to see what else would fit in there, and one of the other real grades that would fit was the Mark II. Now, I particularly have the Titans version in there using the Exia's base adapter because they fit, but it works just as well. Of course, the feet are a little too big, and proportionally, it's pretty close. It works fine, but overall, I mean, this doesn't really fit the UC design, but a lot of early UC stuff like the original Gundam or the Mark II, it would fit, generally speaking. Now, of course, things like the Zeta aren't going to fit, and nothing from Seed's going to fit, but if you have this laying around and you want to pop it in there, I guess you technically can. But I wanted to look at a high grade. What other high grades could I think of that would have the 3mm peg that's pretty popular, that would fit in here, that have a small backpack? And it actually, something like this design, the GN Arms Type E, reminds me of the Iron-Blooded Orphans carrier that the Barbados uses pretty early on. So I thought, why not use the Barbados Lupus? And it technically fits. The feet are a little bigger, but they do fit technically. This was a much bigger pain than I thought it was getting it in here. It fell apart, of course, you know, at the torso or the waist joint popped off, which is fine. It made it easier. But the front skirts kept popping off, and I have no idea why. It was just infuriating. But it does go in there, and it looks pretty good. It, of course, isn't the other one that we see in the show that also has a high-grade representation, I think. But it works pretty well. I mean, it's close enough that you could pass for it. So, you got some other options. And all in all, I have to say this is a must-buy. 10 on 10, it's phenomenal. There are a few things, sure, I might change here and there, but it checks all the right boxes for something that's a mobile armor. It's big, it's imposing, it gives you a good amount of surface detail with not going crazy. It's a fun build that's got some gimmicks, but it doesn't go overboard. All the movement is really stable, nothing falls off, it's not finicky. There are a couple spots that you can see some of the hollowed out plastic, but when you're posing it on your shelf, you're really not going to see them. Some of the gimmicks aren't ideal. One of the cannons, like I said, doesn't want to pull out because I think I built it wrong, while the other one pulls out very nicely. It's very fluid, so take of that what you will, but generally speaking, it is a fun build. Everything works the way it's supposed to. The additional fact that you can put other mobile suits in there is just awesome. I mean, that is almost a big enough selling point for me that I would just get this. It's cool to be able to put other things, but especially that real grade Exia, because it just looks so good. The real grade looks good, but that adds another level to the GN Arms to where it's really a nice combination versus one of the other. But overall, those are my thoughts. If you own this, in the comments down below, let me know what you think. If you don't, and you've watched the video and you're like, I might get this, let me know what sold you on it. What do you like about it? What is your favorite part? And of course, if you have any questions, do leave them down below. I will try to answer them to the best of my abilities. But this has been the Spicer, this has been the Gunpla Network, and as always, friends, keep on building.